It all started innocently enough, or so I thought. My husband Dan was away on a business trip, something that had become more frequent over the last year. We had been married for nearly 3 decades, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I always considered our marriage solid. He had a dependable job, I managed the household, and we had raised a daughter, Megan, who recently got married. Her husband, Tom, was polite, soft-spoken, and always helpful when he came around. Everything seemed so normal until that night. Dan had left for a week-long conference in another state, and Megan and Tom had come over to keep me company for a few days. I appreciated their thoughtfulness. Being home alone wasn't something I was fond of, especially with Dan away for so long. I spent most of my time cooking meals and chatting with Megan, while Tom either helped out around the house or sat quietly on the couch scrolling through his phone. Things started to change on the 3rd day. Megan had gone to meet with some friends, leaving Tom and me alone in the house. I didn't think much of it initially. I was busy sorting through old boxes in the attic, trying to clean out some space. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that usually passes without incident. But then something shifted. It started with a knock on the bathroom door while I was cleaning up after having a shower. I had left the door unlocked, so when I heard Tom calling from the hallway, I wasn't alarmed. "Hey, Mom, can you come out for a second?" he asked, his voice casual. The word Mom slipped out of his mouth naturally since he had taken to calling me that after marrying Megan, though I still wasn't entirely used to it. "Just a second, Tom," I called back as I wrapped a towel around myself. I wasn't sure what he needed, but I assumed it was something trivial, a quick question about where the extra laundry detergent was, or whether he could use the dryer. These were the kind of questions I expected from Tom, always innocuous and respectful. As I opened the bathroom door, still in my towel, I was taken aback to see him standing closer than I anticipated. He wasn't holding anything, wasn't asking about laundry or any household chore. His eyes looked different and tense, but not in a comforting way. I suddenly felt very aware of my vulnerability. "Tom, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice catching in my throat. I backed up slightly, still holding the towel tight around me. The distance between us felt too small. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he stepped into the bathroom, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. My heart began to race. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking now. This wasn't like him at all. "Listen," he said, his voice soft but insistent. "I need to talk to you about something. Just stay calm." Stay calm? Why was he asking me that? The air between us grew thick, and I started to feel trapped in the small space of the bathroom. This was wrong, all wrong. "Tom, I think you should leave. Whatever you need to talk about, we can do it later," I stammered, trying to make my voice firm. But my hands were shaking, and I felt the chill of the bathroom tiles under my feet. "I can't leave. Not yet," he said, his tone shifting to something darker. "I've been thinking about this for a while. Thinking about what I whispered, dread settling into my chest. My mind raced with all the possible outcomes, none of them good. Before I could react, he stepped even closer, his hands gripping the edge of the towel wrapped around me. I recoiled in shock, but he didn't let go. "Tom, stop. This isn't right," I said, my voice cracking. I tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. "You don't understand," he muttered, as if trying to convince me or perhaps himself. "This isn't about Megan or Dan, it's about us. I've seen the way you look at me." I froze, horrified at his words. There was no us. There had never been any indication that I had feelings for him. How could he twist things like this? "Tom, you're confused. This isn't real," I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. I didn't want to provoke him, but I needed to make him see how wrong this was. "You're married to my daughter. And you're married to Dan," he shot back, his grip still tight on the towel. "But none of that matters right now." It all happened so fast. One moment I was trying to reason with him, and the next he was pulling me toward him, his intentions all too clear. My mind screamed for me to do something, anything to stop him. But the shock of it all left me frozen, my body numb with fear. In that instant, the betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. This wasn't just a betrayal of my trust, but of Megan's, of Dan's, of everything we had built as a family. And yet, here I was, trapped in this small bathroom with someone I thought I could trust. I pushed against him with all the strength I had, finally breaking free from his grip. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away, clutching the towel tightly around me. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steadier now, though I could still feel the tremor of fear running through me. "This is over. Leave now, or I will call the police." For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes: regret, fear, maybe both. But just as quickly it was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You won't tell anyone," he said, his voice calm, too calm. "You can't. Think about what it would do to Megan, to Dan. No one would believe you anyway." I stood there shaking with anger and fear, knowing he was wrong, but also knowing that the consequences of telling the truth would be devastating. Megan adored Tom, believed in him wholeheartedly. Dan had always been supportive of their relationship, proud of the man she had chosen, and now, all of that could be destroyed. Tom lingered in the doorway for a moment longer before finally turning and leaving the bathroom. The sound of the door clicking shut behind him was deafening, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that washed over me. For hours, I sat on the bathroom floor, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How had things gotten to this point? How had I missed the warning signs? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? The days that followed were excruciating. I avoided Tom at all costs, making excuses whenever Megan suggested they come over. I kept my distance, praying that whatever had come over him was a one-time lapse in judgment, something that would never happen again. But the weight of the secret was unbearable. Every time I saw Megan's smiling face, my heart ached with guilt. Every time I talked to Dan on the phone, I felt like I was betraying him by not telling him the truth. But how could I? How could I destroy my family like this? I turned to Reddit, anonymously posting in one of the relationship advice forums, hoping that someone, anyone, could offer me guidance. The responses were overwhelming, a mix of outrage and support. Some people told me to come clean immediately, that Megan deserved to know the truth about her husband. Others warned me to stay silent, to protect my daughter from the pain that would come with the revelation. I read through the comments for hours, torn between the two extremes. And then one night, I couldn't take it anymore. Megan had come over for dinner, and Tom had stayed behind at their house, claiming he had work to do. As we sat at the kitchen table, laughing and talking like we always had, I felt the weight of the secret pressing down on me harder than ever. "Megan," I began, my voice trembling slightly. She looked up at me, concern flickering in her eyes. "What's wrong, Mom?" she asked, her tone soft and understanding. I hesitated. The words caught in my throat. How could I shatter her world like this? How could I take away the happiness she had found with Tom? But before I could say anything, she spoke again. "Is this about Tom?" she asked quietly. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Megan sighed, setting her fork down on the table. "I've noticed the way you've been acting lately. You've been distant, avoiding us, and I've been meaning to talk to you about it, but I wasn't sure how." I stared at her, my mind racing. Did she know? Had Tom confessed? Or was she picking up on my behavior without understanding the full story? Megan, I began slowly, trying to find the right words. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked at me, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This was it, the moment that would change everything. "Tom did something," I said, my voice shaking. I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud, to describe what had happened in the bathroom that day, but I could see the realization dawning in her eyes, the pieces clicking into place. She stared at me for a long moment, her face pale and expressionless. And then, finally, she spoke. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I knew something was wrong." Tears welled up in her eyes, and I felt my own start to fall. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment when everything would come crashing down around us. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, reaching out to take her hand. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to hurt you." Megan shook her head, wiping away her tears. "It's not your fault," she said quietly. "I should have seen the signs. I should have known." We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the truth hanging heavy between us. The betrayal was too much to bear for both of us. In the end, Megan decided to confront Tom. The confrontation was brutal, and their marriage didn't survive. The fallout from that night in the bathroom rippled through all of our lives, leaving behind scars that would never fully heal. As for me, I never told Dan the full truth. I couldn't bring myself to destroy his trust in Tom or in me, but the guilt remained, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our family. In the end, I realized that some betrayals are too deep to ever truly recover from. They linger in the shadows, haunting us, reminding us of the things we've lost. And no matter how hard we try to move on, the memory of that moment will always be there, a painful reminder of the day everything changed.